In Lesson 2.1, we will be working on square number patterns. You will need your whiteboard marker, and eraser as we do a warm-up. So we will be working with multiplication quite a bit in Unit 2. So what I'd like for you to do is on your whiteboard, I would like you to go ahead and just number 1, number 2, and number 3. So if you have not mastered your multiplication facts through 12, you have some options that you could buy flashcards at Dollar Tree for $1. You could also do some apps. You can do extra math. So go ahead and work on those, but I want answers only. Go ahead, write the product or the answer when you multiply to 3 times 2, 5 times 4, 4 times 3. Pause the video as needed. Number 1, the product of 3 times 2 is 6. The product of 5 and 4 is 20. And the product of 4 and 3 is 12. Go ahead and erase your whiteboard. And again, we're going to number 1, number 2, and number 3. Again, answers only. What is 7 times 8, 9 times 4, and 8 times 7. Remember to pause your video while you write your answers. Number 1, the product when you multiply 7 times 8 is 56. 9 times 4 is 36. And the product of 8 and 7 is 56. Erase your whiteboard. Number 1, 2, and 3 again. Remember, these are just basic facts, and then you are extending those with zeros behind it. So go ahead and figure out the fact, then add the zeros after it. Go ahead, answers only, pause the video. 6 times 4 is 24, and I'm going to add 2 zeros to the end to get 2,400. 4 times 7 is 28, and add on 2 zeros to get 2,800. 8 times 5 is 40. Then I still add 2 zeros behind it to get 4,000. Go ahead and erase your whiteboard. This math message says arrange 32 counters into as many different rectangular arrays as you can. Choose one of the arrays to draw. Well, we don't have counters, unfortunately, but what we can do on our math board, our whiteboard, is to think of what numbers multiplied together would give you 32. So, for example, I could take 16 times 2, which would be 32. I would then draw an array of 16 circles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And I have 2 rows of that. So an array means to draw out the number of rows and the number of counters in each row. Here is one way. Can you come up with at least one more way? Go ahead and pause the video. Remember, you have a multiplication chart in your folder of everyday math game mats that you can use to see what 2 numbers multiplied together give you 32. Pause your video and draw at least one more array. I was thinking about other numbers multiplied together to give me 32. And I know that 8 times 4 is 32. 1 times 32 is 32. So if I were going to draw an array of 8 times 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I need 4 rows of that. This is an array. And one more, a 4th row. If I were to count my little dots, I would get 32 because I have 8 in a row times 4 rows gives me 32. And I could do the same thing for 1 times 32. I literally could put 32 in a row. I won't do that, but those are arrays. These are rectangular because we have 2 longer sides and 2 shorter sides. Go ahead and erase your whiteboard. Keep in mind that rectangular arrays with dots in them, each row has to have the same number of objects or dots, Each column going up and down needs to have the same number of objects or dots. Each array has a rectangular shape, and the product is the total number of objects in the array. Product means to multiply. We have some special arrays called square arrays. A square array is a special rectangular array that has the same number of rows and columns. A square array represents a whole number called a square number. The first 4 square numbers and their arrays are shown below. So 1 is a square number because there's 1 row and 1 column. A 4 is a square array. It has 2 in each row and 2 columns. 9 is a special array called a square number. It has 3 in each row and there are 3 columns. 16 is a square number. It has 4 in each row and this one has 4 rows. Now what I'd like you to do is to go ahead and open to your lesson 2-1 in your math journal, and that is page 35. So remember to just always have your math journal right next to you when you're working and your whiteboard. That's just what you'll need for math on most days. On page 35, it says at the top, square numbers. That's what we're working on today. A square array is a special rectangular array that has the same number of rows and columns. A square array represents a whole number called a square number. The first 4 square numbers and their arrays are shown below, and that's what we saw right here. Now what we're going to do in number 1 is we're going to draw square arrays to represent the next 2 square numbers after 16. So if you remember 1, 4, 9 was square, 16 was square. What would be the next 2 numbers that I would multiply together? I took 1s, I multiplied 2s, 3s, 4s. Next would be 5s. And 5 times 5 is 25. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and darken in 5 dots in one row. Now I'm going to create an F where I have 5 rows and 5 columns. The square number is 5 times 5, which would be 25. Next, I'll go ahead and I would take 6 times 6 if I continue my pattern. And 6 times 6 is 36. Would you go ahead and draw 36? You're going to darken in. I'm going to put 6 in this row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 6 in each column. You should be doing the same thing in your math journal on page 35 with me. If I were to come to your house and take your math journal and take a look at it, I should see most of these pages filled with our lessons. Again, stop the video if you need a little additional time. The next square number is 36. Remember this pattern for a minute. Number 2 says list all the square numbers through 50. Use counters or draw arrays if needed. So my first one was 1, then 4, then 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 4 is 16, 5 times 5 is 25, 6 times 6 was 36. That's what we did in number 1. So our last one was 6 times 6. What would be the next number? What's 7 times 7? 49. The next one, oops, excuse me, I think I did. Let me erase this for a minute. There should be 7 times 7. And then my next one would be 8 times 8, which is 64. And that's higher than 50. So on that line, it says write or list all the square numbers. 1, write this with me, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, and the next one would be 49. 8 times 8 would bring me over or greater than 50. How can you find the 10th square number without drawing the array? Well, if I go to the 10th number, all I have to do is multiply by itself, correct? What's 10 times 10? 100. So what do? I would take the 10th number, write this on the line, times itself. Take the 10th number times itself for number 3. Number 4, list the first 10 square numbers. Well, all I have to really do is go back and look at my previous ones that I've done and add anything to it. So 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 4 is 16, 5 times 5 is 25, 6 times 6 is 36. Remember, you have these all listed above. Okay, remember, we did a lot of the square numbers already. 7 times 7 is 49. 8 times 8 is, use your multiplication chart, 64. 9 times 9, 81. And 10 times 10 is 100. So first, second square number, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th. Go ahead and write those down. The last thing says, describe any pattern you see. So when you're looking at patterns, you often say, okay, what happens between the first number and the second number, the second and the third number? So I'm going to think out loud for a minute. To get from 1 to 4, they added 3. To get from 4 to 9, they added 5. To get from 9 to 7, you add 7. To get from 16 to 25, you add 9. From 25 to 36, you add 11. Does anyone see a pattern yet? Let me continue. To get from 49 to 36, if you can't see this, this is all I'm doing in my head. Let's do one more. How do you get from 49 to 64? You're going to have to subtract. Put the larger number on top. They added 15. Do you see a pattern yet? The pattern is they add the next. And are those even or odd numbers? The next odd number. So they would add 17, 19, and I could go on endlessly. You are going to go ahead and go back into your Schoology folder to see what you need to complete for lesson 2-1.